Hello and welcome to Sugar, Silk and Stretch, a unique boxing podcast brought to you exclusively by Ace Podcast Nation. My name's Ben Doughty.
My name is Michael Silkolajide, Silk without the stretch.
Indeed, yeah. Gary, incidentally, is in transit today. It was brilliant. You know, it's been cool. The last couple of weeks has been especially cool, Silk, because I got to meet you about 3 weeks ago now already, which was
Has it been
obviously
3 weeks already? That's insane.
It's getting on for it. It was 27th. We met on the 28th of September. It was the next day of my trip, which is already a little while ago, October 13th.
26th night of September, right?
Yeah. That was what was that band called?
What?
The song is Gloria, right?
It's Earth, Wind, and Fire. That's like
course.
iconic.
I had a mental block. Gloria. But and then I got to meet Gary this week as well. I met him at the Savoy Hotel, very baroque venue on Monday night, and it was cool. So now I've met both of you guys.
I thought you two were well-known buddies. I thought you got along. I thought you guys hung out before. I didn't know you didn't know each other.
No, listen, I never even knew him. Gary Stretch had vanished from the boxing scene for the best part of 30 years after the Eubank fight, to be totally honest with you. He'd never really done media. He hadn't really been around the scene very much. And to me, you know, it all started. The reason why we're doing Sugar, Silk and Stretch ordinarily now is because I bumped into Ambrose Mendy, who was Nigel Benn's legendary kind of impresario, and Sven Gorley back in the early days of Nigel Benn. And he said to me, can anybody find Nigel Benn's amateur fight with a guy called Rod Douglas? That he wanted to, particularly he was interested in finding this fight. They had the couple. He wanted to find the one that Nigel had won, which helped him, should have had him seen him qualified for the Commonwealth Games. But and I said, well, I can put it out there and see if anybody on my page might know anybody who has it, whatever. And then somebody else said, you know what I'd love to see? Gary Stretch knocking out Georgie Collins, because that was a legendary lost amateur fight from the annals of British boxing, because Georgie Collins was said to be 72 or 73-0, undefeated in 73 amateur fights at the age of 17, and he won 10 national titles. It was a big sensation when Gary knocked him out in the opening round, you know, and then everybody was like, who is this kid called Stretch from St. Helens? So anyway, somebody tagged Gary Stretch in the conversation, and he said there is the smallest little clip used in the run-up to my fight with Eubank. They showed a brief clip of me knocking Collins out, and I found that, and then that's how we got talking. And I said, Gary, you know, we'd love to have you on the show. You know the rest. We did a show, and then he liked it so much he wanted to get on board with us.
Okay.
So, but I never met him before. You know, I mean, obviously, I'd never met you before the other week, but we did know each other already. We just did. You know?
Yeah. Those are the benefits
of social media. Yes, indeed. Listen, one thing we're not going to talk about is all the nonsense going on, which will dominate the weekend of boxing media with all that KSI, Tommy Fury nonsense. And I know you didn't really know what it was and didn't really care. It was Gary who wanted to talk about it last week. And but what you did want to talk about, you were telling me you were just revisiting George Foreman's record and statistics again the other day, and you just thought it's literally insane, and you want to talk about power.
Yeah, I think that, power is one of the most magnificent powers the energies that we have, attributes, I should say, that fighters have. And it's really interesting how some fighters, like I just happened to be filing through and I'm looking through Boxrec and I look at his record and I'm just looking at all these KOs he's piled up. Like everything was like KO this, KO that. And I'm looking and it gets up to like, he's 76, 76-5. And like, what was it? 68 of those wins were by KO.
You're quite right.
That's absolutely wild. And he stopped guys like, George Chuvalo, that chin could never be dented. You know what I mean? Like he knocked out some solid cats. And I don't know, it got me on this thing. Like I want to talk more about where power comes from, how power can be built if you don't naturally have it. Is power even a natural thing, or is sometimes your trainer can teach you something that kind of like curtails or short circuits your power, because power is something that I think every fighter, every human being should have, right? What do you think?
Well, see, as I've said to you before, I was never overly infatuated with power as a kid
And why
because
not?
I got
That doesn't sound like, that's not even like, humans are all about power. On
I
one
was
aspect.
it was all about the style for me. It had to look sexy and graceful and beautiful. That was what I took from Ali. That's what I took from Leonard, even though he was one serious puncher at welterweight. He wasn't a bigger puncher as Tommy Hearns and Pepino Cuevas, but Ray could knock you dead at welterweight. But I didn't pick up on that as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, and so on and so forth. You know what, Michael? You talk about power being trained or natural innate. The old axiom. You've got no time for most old axioms, but they have that one about punchers are born, not made. I'll tell you, right, when I was going to turn pro with a fellow called Harry Burgess, who operated out of a very famous gym in London, in British boxing circles, called the Thomas à Becket in South London on the old Kent Road. He said to me, he saw me on the bag, and he said, "Bet you've never knocked anyone out before, have you?" And I said, "Well, I've stopped a couple." He goes, "Yeah, you stopped a couple, but I bet you've never knocked no one spark out, have you, son?" And I said, "No." And he said, "You know why? Because you're bouncing all over the gaff and throwing all these shots, and all the rest of it, combination
Yeah.
punches,
Yeah.
speed, style, and profile." And then he said, "Settle down, blah, blah, blah," all that kind of thing, sit down on your punches. Then he got me being more like an ordinary professional fighter, I would say. Well, his vision of a professional fighter, a very British boxing blueprint of a box fighter. And then he was saying to my dad and everybody else, "See, he's a devastating puncher." Then he was trying to big me up as this big, incumbent KO king. And he said it's just that he's never used it before. So, but see, this was the thing. I didn't want compliments for my power. I wanted compliments for my style, and I wanted them to compare me to the fighters that I love most dearly. And sometimes they did. So I don't think I paid enough attention to getting people out of there in my amateur boxing career. I don't think you made me think, because I would have thought, if I'd have guessed it several months ago, even a couple of years ago, I'd have guessed that you felt the same. But when you said no fighter should be looking to go the distance if he can avoid it, I think I should have taken more of a leaf out of that particular book. I look back on it and think that way.
Well, it's very interesting because when I hear people, and even reporters back in the day, reporters or people calling my fights on TV, commentators, and even fighters or like at least fight boxing writers, when they talk about me, the last thing they talk about is power. But let me ask you something. What do you think my KO percentage was?
Well,
what would you guess? Just a guess from me.
I would guess it was in a region of 75.
Yeah, I was actually, 70, a little bit higher than 70, but like 70, early 70s.
Yeah.
And to me, that's kind of like, most people would say, oh, well, if you're looking at it, nobody ever says Michael Olajide Silk puncher. You know what I mean? But if you're getting rid of 70, and even the guys that I lost to, or the guys that I lost to, or guys that went the distance, like most of them also hit the canvas as well in my fights.
Yeah.
And that's what's so interesting. It's like you can never really well, there are a number of things that go into making a great punch, but you can never really tell. I listen to what you're saying about yourself and how you never really wanted to end a fight, but that's all a part of it too. It's like punching power comes from your nature.
Yeah, exactly.
As well as your ability, as well as the physicality of projecting a strong punch. It comes from your nature, because I know I've been in fights when I didn't feel I didn't feel like trapped, I didn't feel desperate, or I didn't feel angry, and I didn't feel like I didn't feel like competitive. I didn't really feel like I was hunting. And so when I punched with there wasn't like an alacrity behind it. There wasn't any purpose, and there wasn't any destructive intent. And because there weren't those things, it never happens. Some people people talk about someone being a natural puncher. I think there always has to be intent behind it. What do you think?
I think you're probably right. I think it's an attitude. The interesting thing about that, though, is that that when people will tell you don't load up and don't look for the KO, because then it doesn't come, because you're too tight, you're too coiled, you're trying too hard, and you have to let these, you have to let it happen to fluid,
Well, when you're coiled and when you're tight, what that really does, it hurts your resilience. It hurts your ability to take the punch. Because here's what happened, right? If you're like this and the punch comes and you're relaxed, you go with the punch. If you're like this, bam, punch slams into you, the reverberation shoots right through your body. So fighters, that's why I teach you a lot of neck exercise with boxing. So you go with it and come back. You get hit, you go with the punch and you come back. When you lock up like that, again, you make the impact and there's that solid reverberation that goes through your body. It hurts more.
Do you?
It's that old axiom, kind of like that which doesn't bend breaks. It has one or the other. You either bend or break.
Where do you stand then on the idea that people who say it's the shots you don't see that really damage you or really potentially knock you out?
I mean, that's true too. Like, power comes from a number of things, and that's something we can always touch on. Like, power, to you, where does power come from? What makes somebody a power puncher?
A little while ago, I'd have said it comes from the feet, but I actually think it's, to a great extent now, having kicked it back and forth with you for the last year solid on this podcast, I think maybe it comes from the core, and it comes from Emmanuel Stewart said.
I missed after core. I think you sort of bleeped out.
Core was the only important part of that. What I was saying after that was Emmanuel Stewart said that one of the secrets to being a KO puncher was to clench your fist right at the last moment, and also he believed in turning the fist right over. So instead of it finishing like that, when I throw a right cross, you don't call it a cross, okay? A straight right hand. When I throw a straight right hand, if I actually, instead of finishing like that, if I actually finish it like that, you know what I mean?
Turn it over.
So I turned it over, really screwed it down.
Yeah, that's the torque. That's the torque that matches. I believe in that too. I mean, the torque matches the core's movement. There's a torque in the core and there's a torque in the fist. You turn it over as it goes. It's very much like, I mean, I don't know if you watch baseball. I'm not sure if they do it in cricket, but the way a pitcher would pitch, that's how you project with the most power. The same mechanisms are in the power right hand. I think, stepping in with the punches, your feet's important in that you want to step in with your foot. And if you're stepping forward with your punch, you're projecting, your weight is going forward. One of them, but the most important thing, people say, like, speed is power. But it never has been. Speed is not power. There's a million fast fighters that, you know what I mean? They're fast, but they're not powerful.
Hector Camacho or George Foreman.
Yes, exactly. But you look at somebody like, weight is power.
Yeah.
Weight is power. The number one ingredient for punching hard is weight. I believe it's technique helps, but it's weight, and then when you put speed with it, the faster you can be with something really heavy. A lot of times people, when they start punching fast, they start opening their hands and they're touching and they're using half their body's movement. They're not committing to the punch. They're not punching through. So it's an arm punch. If Joe Calzaghe decided to plant his feet and lock his muscles up and project the punch properly, I'm sure he'd knock guys out as well.
That's the thing, Silk, as well, right? When if you want to throw like let's say an 11-punch combination, and you want to show off like Sugar Ray Leonard and Meldrick Taylor, and like I did when I was a teenager on the bags, I wanted to be seen as the fastest kid in the boxing club. Mm-hmm. A lot of the time, you've got to cheat, and you want to be faster than those guys, and you want them to say, "God, he's got amazing hand speed." Some of the punches are slaps; they have to be.
Yeah. Otherwise, absolutely. Now, here's the thing with Sugar Ray Leonard and with Meldrick Taylor, and this is where Sugar Ray made the conversion and Meldrick didn't. And it's, I don't know why. It's probably something psychological and there's something in their psyches. But Sugar Ray Leonard, as a professional, was an incredible puncher. Like he could crack. That left hook was incredible, and so were his body shots, and so were his overhand right. And even his straight right. So both hands, he was great. But Meldrick Taylor, he's looking to pull his punches back, very much like Howard Davis. Howard Davis and Meldrick Taylor would pull their punches back before they finish the punch before it really made impact. They're already pulling it back because, more or less, like you were saying about yourself, they're caught up in the beauty of the punch, the beauty of the combination, how it looks on TV. Am I, you know what I mean? Am I, you know, am I a virtuoso with my hands, kind of thing?
Yes, exactly that.
So, and punches tend to be a lot more, I guess, systematic and predictable, and I guess patient. But in the amateurs, it's a numbers game, so I can understand putting up the numbers because you only have 3 rounds in which to get a win.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for the punch, like a lot of great punchers that fought amateur, they didn't reach their goals of becoming like an Olympic gold medalist or Golden Glove champ because they didn't let their hands go. There's not enough time to to find a guy within 3 rounds who's moving around letting his hands go quickly. So
well,
that's why the lighter
punches
punchers do much better in the amateurs.
They always say Tommy Hearns couldn't punch as an amateur. He only found that chilling power when he turned over.
It's really interesting because I see Tommy. I've seen a couple of his amateur fights in YouTube and everything, and it looks like he punches. The mechanics are the same, but there's also a thing that you call top heavy, and that's a different type of puncher. And guys that are top heavy, they have like that wide back, the cobra back, the heavy throughout the shoulders and everything. He wasn't quite developed there when he was younger. When he was like, as an amateur, he was a lightweight junior welterweight.
Yeah.
So he was a lot thinner, straight like this. And then as he turned pro, or before he turned pro, he started to fill out. But at some point, something had to signify to him that he is a puncher now. So he fought, what was it? He fought Howard Davis and Aaron Pryor at not at 140. He fought him, I believe, at 135, maybe even lighter.
Yeah, that's right. That's correct.
And so he hadn't nearly filled out, grown. As skinny as he was, he still wasn't that same puncher because he didn't have the weight in the back. He didn't have the weight in the fist. He did have the speed. He had the exact same mechanics. It's very interesting. But his physicality changed.
You know Mike Ayala beat Tommy, right? You remember that, yeah?
Oh, yeah, I remember you saying. That's amazing.
And do you know something? What's interesting? I know this will appeal to your imagination. I'm talking to people about doing a movie based on the Ayalas, but we're thinking of going more with Mike as at least, if not the central character, at least the twin character, so we can spin it more that it's not just a terrible story with a very abjectly terrible ending.
Yeah.
We're thinking of Baby Bull and the Cyclone, and in that we will depict the Tommy Hearns fight because there's no video of it. There never will be, and not many people know about it. But can you imagine bringing it to life sensitively through Mike's eyes, and maybe even Tommy's eyes if we can get him to make some remarks on it? That'd be cool, right?
Yeah, it'd be very cool. I'm pretty sure Tommy would be down for that. Tommy's great. You may have to, you know what I mean? You may have to hit him in the pockets a little bit, but he'd definitely do it.
Yeah. Well, we should get him on the show one time because he did Spencer Fear on Tunde Ajayi's show called The Fight Is Right. So we can maybe get Tommy on here.
Oh, that would be cool. So as you were saying, so speed is not necessarily power. Never has been. Weight is power. 2, stance is really important. Guys that tend to spread their legs a little bit more are better punchers. And
that's what Roy Jones said.
Yeah.
Roy Jones said it always.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And that's because what you do is you widen your foundation, you widen your base, your platform. Let's say that it's almost like a catapult. You know what I mean? The catapult needs that foundation in order for it to project the punch or the boulder, to project it forward and to project it far with the weight and velocity. And so, I've noticed that, whenever you go to knock somebody out, you separate your legs. It gives you more foundation. And you look at somebody like, John the Beast Mugabe, George Foreman, although he didn't do it as much when he was older. He kept his feet a lot closer together and used his he was top heavy puncher. Whereas when he was younger, he would separate his legs a lot wider.
Real wide. Yeah. And with the arms, and he'd parry him and turn people all the time. But did Foreman lose his punch eventually in his grandfather Doughty? He appeared to, almost.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, yeah, he probably didn't punch as well, but as well as he did when he was younger. One, because you kind of like quell the demon a little bit. You know what I mean? You actually
Yeah,
quell the demon, like that fire that he fought with as a youth came from a lot of things. It came from like an unfortunate, you know, um, the way he lived as he came up. I mean, there was that
yeah,
sense of desperation that he had, and
yeah,
that sense of panic, and all those things make you more tense. And tenseness causes this, right? It causes
yeah,
that tenseness in you, and so it's not only emotionally the will and the will and the intent to hurt somebody or knock them out. There's also the physicality of it, like the actual closing of the fist, because here like this, when your fists are closed like this, then they're dense, they're like cannonballs, it's like all the way
yeah.
through. But when those hands are like this and you have the hollow open with them, you're not hitting the same, not
No,
at all.
no. So, what about Joe Lewis? I mean, obviously, he's been lauded, rightfully so, I would say, as one of the
Yeah,
greatest punchers in boxing history.
yeah,
He was a concussive one-shot puncher, but he was also a
yeah,
beautiful combination puncher. He
yes,
used real basics, all the beautiful,
yeah,
fundamental,
yeah,
rudimentary basics.
yeah.
But
Visually he was beautiful to look at when he was fighting.
yeah, because every shot was almost clinically perfect, and people talk about Jack Blackburn's masterful coaching, and you do wonder if there's some lost wisdom that hasn't really translated or been handed down to coaches later on in the game, even though some people think the game's evolved on certain level.
Yeah.
Um, you do
Yeah,
wonder.
it hasn't really evolved. I don't think it's evolved, but I think like the biggest problem with trainers is there aren't enough fighters that turn back into the sport to take their experience and use on modern day fighters. Too many fighters are, they finish boxing and they're maybe frustrated with their careers,
Yeah,
or it frustrates them to have to teach somebody because they're a certain ability, and it does take a special kind of something, that patience to teach somebody, even desperation, or I don't know, kind of like when you're doing something together, there's got to be that back and forth, and that's not what something fighters are used to. It's very much like the fighter's world is, it's all about me and it's what I do, and I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm not I'm not going to start trying to speak, cordially to somebody when all you want to do is swear at them and say, "You dumb da 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 da, why aren't you doing it like this? And this is
yeah,
what I taught you." And da, da. And so that leads to a really short relationship. You know what I mean? It certainly doesn't lead to a successful long relationship. So those kinds of courtesies fighters aren't used to showing to people, and nobody, I guess, nobody really wants to deal with that. Like I just don't understand how more fighters don't get into it. There are fighters that have not been in the top 10 or the top 20, and they fought amateur careers, good amateur careers, and maybe not very successful professional careers that go into boxing, but it's few and far between.
yeah. I mean, I sometimes wonder if the amount of punches per head is decreasing in the modern era. When you think back to bygone eras, and you think of you, even let's talk about the 80s. Like you got huge punchers like Wilfredo Gomez, Carlos Zarate, Ruben Alvarez, 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Even guys like Cyclone Hart, even who never became world
Mhm.
champions.
Eugene Cyclone Hart.
Yeah, and I do wonder if you talk about devastating, murderous punches today. There's usually always one guy, the banner star, at any particular time when it's purely for punching power in boxing. Whereas I wonder today, who is the hardest pound for pound puncher you think currently active in boxing today? Yeah, I mean it could be Inoue.
It absolutely could be Inoue. It could be Inoue. He's definitely, I mean, he's a puncher, no doubt about that. Um, I, obviously a lot of people want to say Wilder, and I'd give you
Yeah,
that. He's definitely naturally a good puncher. I don't know what he's like with his left hook or
is,
with
is
his
he
jab.
active though? Is Deontay Wilder active? Does he qualify?
Well,
Because I would have said
I
him
don't
as
even know if it's a matter of his activity. What I would say was like the caliber of opponents that in which he fights, I just don't know. Like knowing how to ride a punch, knowing how to take a punch, knowing how to fight a puncher will distinctly change how that puncher fights. So, for instance, if he's fighting somebody that he feels he can wipe the floor with, and it causes him no hesitation, then of course he's going to go in there and he's going to be able to let his punches go like not a problem, not an issue, right? He'll
Yeah.
go out there and he'll let hell go from from his fists. And if he hits a person, it's obviously he's going to knock them out because he's a puncher. But the thing is, when you have somebody of equal or better ability, and you know that, you start hesitating. Once you start hesitating, things aren't coordinating.
Yeah.
The
If
muscles.
you get tired as well,
And-
when people make you hesitate and unsure of yourself, and they're fainting and getting you at it, you start getting tired. When you think, "Why am I tired?" And he's not hardly working sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the thing is, like, for instance, you're hesitating also because it hurts when he hits you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or he's hitting you easily at one point, and you start thinking about, oh, I better defend myself, and you don't get a chance to let go of punches with confidence. So what I'm saying is, pretty much Deontay Wilder, all the guys he's fought, he thought he could knock out, and he knew he was going to knock them out, and they didn't have the ability, nor did they have the the cachet going into it that they could knock him out, with the exception of Fury. But you know, Fury, again, that's an exceptional fight.
But you know,
Everybody else, sorry,
Fury was very close to being knocked out as well. I mean, some people think he benefited from a long count as well, don't they, Fury? And also, do you remember that the first fight in LA, where I happened to be in attendance at the Staples Center? Do you remember that the referee, I think his name is Jack Rice, asked him to walk forward, a bit like, you know, the drunk driving test. Can you please walk in a straight line? And can you do this? Go backwards and forwards? And people were saying, where the fuck did that rule come from? I never said. And they said, oh no, it's a new rule. It's a new WBC rule.
Yeah.
But have we been? Think about it, Silk. Have we been observing that rule since, or was it just around for then, and has it been since discontinued? Have you noticed it?
I'd seen it. I'd seen other fights where the referee said, "Walk to me," and if he walked right, then you know what I mean. It was one way of testing whether or not. I don't think it was a time grab. You know what I mean, giving him more time to recover. But I have seen it where the referee says, "Walk to me," and he walks to him, and then he goes, "Okay," he rubs his gloves or whatever, and he goes, "Fight." Yeah. So yeah, I have seen that. I don't think that was something. I don't think that's something unique because I'd seen it a number of times.
There's a contentious comment from one of our watchers, by the way, and I've got to pick this up. Mick Thompson says, I quote verbatim, "The very best boxing trainers were shit boxers or have never boxed. They're usually boxing fans, or they're usually boxing fans." Yeah, well, let's think about that. Let's examine that comment. The very best boxing trainers are shit boxers. Jack Blackburn was nearly a borderline all-time great fighter himself, and was an all-time great trainer. So there's an example where that's not quite correct, Mick. Where'd you stand, Silk? Freddie Roach was nothing special in the ring, but he was a fringe contender. All right. Manny Stewart was a very good amateur, they said. He could have turned pro all day long. James Buddy McGirt is a good trainer, a proven good trainer, and was a very, very good fighter, Hall of Famer. Yeah. So I don't know about this one. Ray Arcel never boxed in his life. Angelo Dundee never boxed in his life. Charlie Goldman was described as a crack bantamweight. Yeah. When I read about him in the Pictorial History of Boxing, who trained Rocky Marciano. Now, assuming they didn't mean he was a 118-pounder on crack cocaine, I imagine they mean he was a good bantamweight, right? Yeah. So I think that's a little bit of a sweeping statement Mick just made then.
Yeah. I think sometimes, sometimes you just don't want to mess up the ingredients. You know what I mean? Like you have something good, a guy's a good puncher, great fighter, or whatever it is, and you just and you compliment him instead of changing him. Like a lot of fighters need to learn how to. The majority of guys that are into boxing need to that box and compete need to learn from the ground up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there are certain fighters that don't need that, and just need to like you don't want to, the ingredients are perfect. You don't want to mess with them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how much, I don't think there were very many people that influenced Ali's style.
I don't think so because, and if they did, they were other boxers that Ali liked, and the young
Yes.
they watched.
Yeah,
Who
yeah,
else
exactly.
watched?
And and that's the thing with most fighters. Like that's what happens today. Like with a lot of trainers today, they'll say, "Okay, let's take that from Mayweather, and let's take that from Leonard, and let's take that from Marciano, and let's borrow this." And they put these things together, and they don't really have a methodology.
Yeah.
They, and that's what like boxing is like the Western Hemisphere's martial art, and you need a methodology in order for a fighter to be complete. Like you see these fighters talking about punches, yeah, but what about the fact that when they have to take punches, you know what I mean? They shouldn't have to take the amount of punches that they take, and like the we talk about, oh yeah, the fighters that you don't have to be a great trainer in order to train a fighter, or you don't have to ever have boxed before in order to be a fighter. Well, you do, because you know why so many fighters end up punchy, and they have like eye issues, brain
Yeah.
issues, balance issues, all the rest of that stuff. And I would have to assume that's because a lot of them, like, defense isn't taught. But if fighters were in there, and fighters, especially fighters that have fought, that have injuries and residuals from the fight career, if they were saying to themselves, "Well, I don't want this guy to end up like me, so I'm going to show him some things that would get him past that. That won't have to happen to him." That's how you better boxing, and that's how you are a better trainer. And only guys who have fought before can do that. Everyone can tell you how to punch. Everyone, you can naturally, your instincts, you're just naturally an aggressive fighter. And I understand that. But you need to learn the nuances. The
That's what
nuances.
Witherspoon. That what you just said there would be very. It's very consistent with what Tim Witherspoon says about himself and what he can offer a fighter if anybody would give him a chance. Like Andy Joshua, he's been gunning for years just to help him out, teach him where to put his hands, how to take less punches, and be more effective. And Tim had all those fights, against a couple of generations of great heavyweights, and he is sharp as a tack and clear as a bell.
Yes. Yes.
So and when he looks at Tommy Hearns, who does slur his words a lot and is what some people would describe as, they would say he's got dementia pugilistica. He says Tommy had no defense. That's what Tim says, but that's probably a bit of a sweeping statement, a little bit unfair to Tommy, but he says he had no defense. And then that's why he says he's in the cerebral shape that he's in today.
It's crazy. I think Tommy does have defense. He absolutely does. Like he can get his head out the way.
His legs.
His intent. Well, he could move around, but I mean, he could actually like pull, slip, get to the side. He does all that stuff. It's very subtle, and you tend to look at his power and his offense dominates obviously his defense. But it's because Tommy's intent is so pure. Like his intent, no matter who he fights, every single time he stepped in the ring, his intent was he just wants to hit you. He wants to land a punch on you, and he'll give up anything. He'll stay there. When you're a committed puncher, you have to stay there in order for it to make it happen. So obviously, it's going to come back at you.
Sarge Ali also says that Tommy did have a bit of a drawl even when he was young. To be fair to any judgment that's made,
Yeah. I mean, look, it's only. I mean, you look at Hearns' amateur record, and then you look at Hearns' the way in which they sparred and trained for fights.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's insane. And then when you look at his professional career and the guys he fought and the kind of fights he was involved in, and you say to yourself, I don't know how he's even still able to, you know what I mean? Like, say the things he needs to say. It's impossible. Like you must be made out of something titanium in order to even be in the position you are today to function and have the motor skills that you do have.
Yeah.
Because he goes far beyond like his physical capabilities. That resilience must have been something else.
Yeah, and when we've spoken before about his contemporaries, Hagler, Duran, and Leonard, who they all seemed. I mean, Hagler's no longer with us, but they all seemed in fine fettle. I mean, Ray is very, very erudite and doesn't. Yeah. He says, I remember when I interviewed him over 10 years ago, he said, my wife still can't believe I was a boxer. He says, she doesn't believe he was a boxer. Yeah, because his new wife that he has today.
Yeah.
And Duran, I don't speak Spanish, but the vibe of Duran is that he's
Yes.
absolutely all there and
Yeah.
loves his life and is happy with each passing day. And Marvin was just exactly like I imagine Marvin would be.
Yes. Yeah.
Bristling, a little kind of mean and moody,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Hagler. When I talked to him as well, he hadn't slipped at all. And when it's interesting because look at Iran Barkley, for instance.
Yes.
Iran, you talk to him and you look at him and you think of all his fights and everything. You think he's slow, but he isn't.
No.
I've had lunch with him a couple of times and we've talked and over the years and we've had car rides together and everything. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with this guy.
I never actually heard him talk that weekend, you know. When we were with him at I got 2 pictures with him, never heard him say a word.
Yeah, Iran's always said, was always small on the talking part. You know what I mean? Unless you piss him off, then he'll come at you. You know what I mean? But basically, he's not one to like go back and forth with the with the insults. He's more of an action than a talk kind of dude. But he's very clear with his thoughts. When he states his thought, he's very clear. There's no he'll hesitate only because maybe you're talking over him or something like that. But he doesn't have. I don't think he has any brain damage or motor skill issues at all. I think it's all like if he slows only because he's heavier now and he hasn't been active in a while. You know what I mean? That's really it. So I think that says something about, I guess, a thicker cranium. I don't know.
I think it must be something to do with that. You might recall the tragic Johnny Owen who died as a result of his fight with Luke Pintor in 1980. He was found to have an abnormally thin skull, to the point where they said it was perhaps fortunate that he hadn't suffered an injury at an earlier point in his career, having had 30-odd fights up to that point. I believe he was British and European and Commonwealth bantamweight champion. And they said he just had a very abnormally thin skull, which might not have passed more modern safety, medical procedures with British Boxing Board of Control. I think having do you know what though? So I think having a thicker skull definitely helps. The bone density, your cranium, like you said.
Oh, absolutely.
But I also think, when you said you were talking about punching power and punching and being a knockout artist is partly psychological and partly to your attitude and your mindset, right? I think having a chin, I've always felt, I might be wrong, by the way, I've always felt like having a great chin is kind of partly like that kind of attitude as well. Like I remember Danny Romero, a former guest on this show, he was said to be the hardest pound for pound puncher in boxing at one point when he fought Johnny Tapia, and in the late 90s. And Tapia said, if he hits me on the chin, I'll just laugh. And he pretty much did. And I think sometimes maybe you need the chin in the first place to have that kind of confidence in it. But I do think some of it might be psychological in terms of how your confidence and how you feel about getting punched in the face.
I would tend to agree with that only because when you're getting hit, it's not really an emotional. It's not really an emotional event. It is to some people that have never been hit before. Of course, it's an emotional event. It's like, oh my God, this is something new to me. But by the time you're fighting for a world title, that kind of trauma should be normalized. Right? That kind of do you hear me? Don't hear you, Ben. Yeah, I think you were messing around with the switches. Still don't hear you. Maybe you need to go out and come back in again. He always does this when I start to get on a roll. He always messes up my thing. Go out, come back in. Go out, come back in. Go out. Go out. Come back in. Out. in. Yeah, so it's just me gabbing by myself right now until Ben joins us again. I'm sorry about this. He'll come right back, I'm sure. Um, I wish I had the ability to see people's reactions and answer questions for you. If you want to talk about punches and punching power, it's something that's very exciting. We all love to see it. I know that. Are you there, Ben?
I am. You know what that was? That was Ellen K. Bromson calling me in the middle of the show, and then it shuts down our fucking audio. People need to stop doing that. It's like you might. She watches the show obsessively. She has to know we're on. You know, all right, we're later today. I know that, but that is. We need to get to a point where this can't happen. I don't know. You
Yeah,
know,
she's a beautiful woman. I love her energy. But how come don't you get like the written? They can ask questions and don't they show up on your screen?
they do us, yeah. Which and I can actually show you that highlight question. Can you see it now?
Okay, so there we go. Yeah, so let's do that.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the point, where was I? We were talking about chins, and taking them is not like giving them. I do not think like there are just so many things in being able to take a punch that you hope you can prevent against, but it's a natural, like a physical, the thickness of your cranium. I think it has a lot to do with like the thickness of the neck as well.
Yeah,
Do the muscles cover the nerves? Like you see some fighters that get hit around the head all the time, and you get hit on the point of the chin, they go out. It's finding the soft spot. There are fighters that could take it all the way, like get punched in the face, get hit in the body, everything. You hit them off the top of the head, like Jerry
yeah,
Cooney or Alex Ramos, and all of a sudden they're, you know what I mean, they're out of sorts. There are
yeah.
sweet spots in boxing too. Like there are certain types of punches that hit you with like a kind of something that like shifts your brain over. It's kind of like sloshes the brain. So it's like caught in your brain's moving inside the encasing. I'm sorry, your brain's moving inside the skull encasing. Those kind of punches are like George Foreman, for instance, or John Mugabe, the heavy-handed guys. And then there's guys that hit you with the nerve. It's more of a nerve punch, like Tommy Hearns, for instance.
Yeah.
It's really interesting how that works.
It is. You said Tommy Hearns' right hand was like Novocaine. You said.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. It's numbing. It's there's no pain in either one. What there is like when you come, like I've been hit and I've come to on the way down. Like it was just like a quick out, and you're on the way down. You're like, oh hell, and it's time to get up, and you're thinking there's no fear involved. It's just a matter of like you've either things are imbalanced because the your brain's been shifted to the side, or it's a nerve thing and you need to like you've got 10 seconds for your body to start all the synapses to start firing normally again so you can get up and do whatever you got to do. And that's what when you see guys, one foot's going that way, one foot's going the other way. It's like it's like being a baby, learning how to walk all over again. And you have to do that 2-year or 1.5 year of learning how to walk process in 10 seconds.
Yeah, you know what? I've only been hit once like that where I went down and I don't know what happened. The next thing you know about it, you're on your back.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, you remember Darren Barker?
What's his name?
His name was Darren Barker. He fought Sergio Martinez and he beat Daniel Gill to become, I believe it was IBF middleweight champion. He fought Sergio Martinez for what was probably the WBA See, this is why they're ruining boxing history. Iceman John Scully says it all the time. I'm trying to remember what titles these guys held, and I'm pretty good, and I can't. I think I'm probably right, but I have to guess to an extent. I think Martinez was a WBA champion who beat Darren Barker by 11th round KO, I believe, and he beat Daniel Geale on points, getting up from a body shot on the way. But so Darren was a world-class fighter, right? He was, as an amateur, he was a Commonwealth Games gold medalist. As a pro, he was British. Commonwealth, European, and a world champion. He hit me when he was still an amateur. He was getting ready for the European Championships, the amateurs, right? It was 2004 at a Repton Boxing Club. I believe it was January. And he hit me with a shot. I think I've told you about it before. It was a 45-degree shot, caught me on the chin, underneath the chin kind of thing. There. And I went down. I didn't know what happened. I thought I'd slipped. You know when you think you've slipped? And you don't. No, you didn't. When you get up and you're trying to retain your gait and your head's kind of crackling a little bit, and then you're like, no, you didn't. He hit you. But I've only ever had that sensation once.
Yeah, I mean, I've had one thing. I've had once is like you got hit and you're fighting, but you're fighting on instinct, and I didn't know that I was fighting until like 2 rounds later.
Yeah.
It's like you come to. It's a very strange thing. You're fighting on instinct, on autopilot, and it's wild because then when you look back at the fight and you say to yourself, "This is what your nature does." You know what I mean? This is what your nature was meant to do.
This is how you talk about yourself when you're not around.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because don't people talk about like when you get older and you have dementia, but the hardwired stuff you remember, or is it the other way? Like the stuff that you like songs you remember when you were a kid, you can recall all of that, but you can't remember how to walk or what that. You read something and you forget it the next second. So the instantaneous, immediate memory is not there. But that long ago stuff, you remember when your parent took you to the movie and you had glazed donuts afterwards or whatever it is. It's like you remember that stuff. That's what's so wild about the brain. And
yeah. Well, do you remember Mike Tyson said after the Holyfield fight, the first Holyfield fight, when he was stopped in the 11th round, he said, he couldn't remember the fight. He said, I don't even remember the fight. He said, he hit me in the 3rd or 4th round, I believe. And he said, and after that, I don't remember anything.
Yeah.
And Holyfield said.
Marlon Starling, after he was knocked out in a fight.
Thomas Molinares.
Yeah. And he got up and he was in the interview and he was like, I wasn't knocked out.
Yeah, he did.
And they were convincing him he was.
Gene Fulmer said he wondered why Robinson was doing exercises in his corner. He must be in great shape to be doing that in between rounds. Almost like he was celebrating. He's like, why is he doing that for? And they said, it's over. You got knocked out, Gene. He didn't know. Those,
we've had that where time just disappears, and it's very interesting how that works. Like all of a sudden, the way we play, the way punches play with time, and even the fight itself, when it's happening fast, when you're on the downside, it happens so everything happens slow. The round goes forever when you catch the beating, but when you have somebody ready to go, how it just disappears and it's real quick. So some of the other things I was mentioning, like you said, feet. You thought feet were important with punching, and absolutely stepping in with the punch absolutely is, because then it brings your whole body weight into the punch, right?
Yeah,
that's the difference from stepping in and pivoting are two different things. Pivoting does not help you punch hard, and I always try to explain that.
I was having this argument. I was talking to someone the other night at the gym, the white collar gym. Yeah, the thing about the white collar gym is you'll get these enthusiastic newcomers who might already have their professional license, by the way, from the British Boxing Board of Control these days, but they're still. This girl that I train all the time called Lois, and the next minute I see she's on the mix with the other guy, and he's teaching her to turn her foot on the jab, just like you turn your foot on a straight right. She's throwing left jab, and he's getting her to turn her foot that way, and she queries it because she's been working with me for 3 years. And I
Yeah.
said, and I came down and said, excuse me, sorry, did you just tell her to turn her foot on the left jab? And he went, yeah. I said, I beg to differ. You beg to differ, right, too? Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. I
So I
mean,
said, step in with the jab, push off the back foot and step in with it, sure.
yes.
But
Yeah.
you don't need to turn it like. And then I told him about you and about Tom Yankello, who spends a lot of time certainly saying stop pivoting when you throw your left hook.
Yeah.
I don't think Silk. I don't think you can get away from the pivot on the right hand. It's the straight right hand, or if you're a southpaw, it'd be your straight left hand, what some people call the backhand. I think you've got to pivot on that, but I don't think you need to pivot on the jab. And you're right, the hook, not always, not necessarily.
Yeah. Not necessarily. I mean, if you're going with the punch again, we have to think about what is the purpose of the pivot. And what do you think the purpose of the pivot is, Ben?
Well, I think for the right cross, you don't like cross. It just feels like it does go across a little bit, right? It goes across more. The jab feels like it travels a bit straighter. The cross,
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Because
I
you're
think you
turning your
have to
body
turn
with
the
it.
foot on that for balance, for continuity, for flow, for distance. You get a bit more distance off of it. You do, because if you're going to turn your shoulder and you're going to turn your core or your hip, then and your knee and everything else, then your foot has got to play ball with all that. But the pivot on the hook, honestly, I don't remember doing it up until about 2003 when I got to Gleason's, and I saw some fighters doing it and some fighters coaching it, and I saw John Doughty, who I recently reunited with on a film set at random, turning his foot with the coach. I don't know if it was Hector Rocker or whoever it was coaching him, but you know how he teaches because you've been with him.
Yeah.
But I started turning my foot more consciously when I threw a left hook. When I come back with a left hook or leave with a left hook, unless you're going to jump with it, which is a different thing.
Yeah.
As I'm saying all this, it is a big shame we didn't get a chance. We crammed so much into the other week, but we didn't get a chance to get in the gym and have a conversation in real time with gloves on and pads and bags.
Yeah.
That would have been. We have to do that at some point. We will do that because that would be so valuable. But anyway, but what I noticed was, so I started teaching that and doing that for a bit. I had a few more amateur fights at that point as well. Then I went into coaching kind of simultaneously. But what I noticed when I wasn't watching myself, or I'd be looking at other fighters in the ring or on the bag, half the time they would not be turning that foot on the left hook. They'd just be flat foot and they'd turn the hip. I noticed Floyd Mayweather often throws his hook like that. He doesn't turn the foot up. He just turns the core. So I don't think. I think it's well overrated to the point where maybe you could kind of semi-abandon it as far as the hook goes. I don't see any way of getting past it on the rear end though. I think if you try to do that with your foot flat on the floor and you leave it there, I don't see how that's going to work as well for you.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, in order for the right hand to be the straight right hand to be effective and to be a knockout punch, yes, you want to, again, it's the rotation of the core that does it.
Yeah.
And the weight of the fist, the weight of the upper body, and transferring the weight forward. But you need to drive off the back foot. And to drive off the back foot, even if you're a flat-footed puncher, you push in, you push forward. Your body weight is what gives you power, right?
Yeah.
And so you need to like thrust off that back foot so your body weight starts going forward. So same thing with like a power jab or a hook. You're not only just stepping in with the left foot, you're also pushing off the back foot, off the right foot, if you're orthodox. And it's the same thing with now. What happens with it now if you overextend on the right hand? If you overextend on the right hand, then you need to pivot to get back on balance. The purpose of the pivot, as far as I'm concerned, is to allow you like maybe more range so you can make the punch and you can stay balanced while you're punching through that range. Now that's what's important to power. Like you want to transfer your weight forward, you push off your back foot like you were a sprinter in a block, okay? You're a sprinter in the block, you're about to go on 100, you drop down, your left foot is I don't know, it's probably on the ball of the foot too as a sprinter, but let's just say it's flat and your back foot is up, it's in the blocks. Your back foot is off the ground. When the gun sounds, bang, it's time to go. You thrust off your back foot, which is your right foot, right? You thrust off that. That's what gives you the power to go forward. That's what transfers your weight forward. It's the same thing with boxing. When you throw that right hand, you transfer, you push forward. Now the pivot is so you don't go too far, because obviously in sprinting you keep going on that one line. You have to bring it back, because if you leave your hand out there, you get countered. If you commit,
Yeah,
you can be countered. So that's what the pivot's all about. So you can like punch through and then come back and
it's
bring it
about
back.
readjustment and reset. It's not about leverage and power, as far as you're
It's
concerned.
yes, exactly. It's not
Yeah.
about the power. The pivot is not about it. It doesn't help you punch harder. It helps you reload so you could punch again.
Yeah, exactly. Which there is a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of things which are taken as gospel, and they've been handed down for aeons and decades as gospel. When they're there to be questioned, certainly. And ultimately, the textbook's all well and good, but if all you're going to turn out is a textbook boxer, if he's going to be special, he has to have something special about him.
I mean, you look at somebody like Tommy Hearns when he throws that right hand. He's probably like he's got to be in one of the top 3 ever of straight right hands. If you're thinking about it, you know what I mean? How devastating and like that straight right hand was. And you watch how he did, and he did turn his back foot a lot, but he committed everything to that right hand.
Yeah.
Like he stepped in with purpose, and he came up onto the ball of that back foot, and he drove through. And often he would turn it over, but not nearly like how they're teaching you how to throw them today. I mean, I'm
No.
looking at it, and everyone looks like Chubby Checker doing the twist. They
Yeah,
pivot on
there
the
you
left,
go.
they pivot on the right.
Because this is the thing, the guy that I was talking about who was coaching my goal, he was getting her to turn the foot on a left hook to the body as well. You know when you dip down and you're throwing left hook to the body, turn it up. And I said, that is a fucking balance catastrophe, my man. Right?
And it takes away from the power of your punch when you don't
Damn
pivot
right.
right.
But
You don't have weight behind your punch. It absolutely destroys your punching ability. If you want to punch hard, you need to lock. There needs to be a synergy between your muscles, your upper body, your lower body, and your core brings it all together. And that's what transfers the power forward. And if you're not doing that, there's no way you're going to be a puncher unless you just happen to be heavy-handed.
do you know, and drawing to a close as I see we approach the 57-minute mark. Talking about Tommy Hearns, he went through a bit of a crisis, they say, an identity crisis as well, in that kind of Murray Sutherland, Doug DeWitt phase, when before he returned as the hitman against Duran with that devastating performance, which set up the fight with Marvin Hagler. He was going the distance a few times, and he was finding it hard to knock guys out, and he lost himself a little bit. And they said, I think he had maybe hand trouble and operations, like, the puncher's curse. But somebody in Ring Magazine, I really can't remember who it was today, said, he's been going to therapy and counselling. He's been seeing a psychiatrist. It's like his whole existence and his whole identity is tied up in how hard he can hit with his right hand. And that caused him a serious, personality crisis, supposedly, for a little short period when he was having trouble scoring goals.
Yeah. Well, what's really interesting about Tommy? I mean, he was such a great puncher, but I don't think he's ever been outboxed.
No, they say that. They often say that. So Sugar Ray Leonard didn't outbox him. Benitez did not outbox him.
You might say Iran Barkley did in the second fight. You know what I mean?
Fought him, and I realise I'm playing semantics there a little bit, but because that fight was quite a close quarter fight, as I recall. They were infighting a whole lot in the second fight.
Yeah. And I can't that's one of the things when people talk to me about Mayweather and Hearns, I'm like, there's no way Mayweather can outbox Hearns. There's no way.
It makes me laugh when people say the best thing that the Floyd advocates can come up with, and they're usually pretty young and pretty ignorant, with all due respect. They say, I just think Floyd would have found a way. It's like, oh yeah, really? Okay. I've said it before. I could prove in a court of law that he can't beat Tommy Hearns.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like Tommy's reflex, his reflex is just so fast. It's almost like he doesn't even have to think about, you don't see him thinking about when to throw a punch. He just instincts. He has those kinds of instincts where he just instinctually, he'll just let it go. Like, it's kind of like, you think of a crocodile and this is what they do. And that's all they do. And they know how to do that better than anything. It's like this. Snap, it's over. That's it.
And you know, is Floyd going to get bold and make some heroic decision to get inside and to take a risk and break him up? No,
He's not walking down Tommy Hearns.
no.
That's not happening. You know
So
what I
that
mean?
is written in stone that Floyd Mayweather couldn't have beaten Tommy Hearns, and then you'll get some other annoying fool at some point who'll say, "Well, we'll never know." It's like, well, no, we do know, don't we, Silk? We know. We know.
Well, they say They say like he'd never hit him, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I just don't know what they're visualizing.
But DeMarcus Corley could, yeah, Michael. DeMarcus Corley could hit him.
Yeah, chop hit him.
Exactly.
And there are others. I mean, look, the Cotto fight was a good fight, and Shane Mosley and Pacquiao, and who's the other kid? The kid that beat oh man, he actually didn't he rock Floyd? I mean, look, anyone can get hit by anybody, and they're gonna if it's a good shot, you get hurt. The kid from South America.
You mean Madonna?
Maidana, yes. You know what I mean? It's like anyone can be gotten to, and it doesn't mean. I mean, we've seen it before. Like Sugar Ray fought dudes, and he fought big punches and didn't get hurt by him. Then he fought lesser punches and gets dropped by him.
Exactly that. You know, it all depends on so many things. It's like Ali. You know, Cooper knocked him down, and the number of times I've heard a barroom argue and saying, "If Henry Cooper can knock him down, I'm sure I and Mike would have destroyed him." But it's different. But he wasn't taking Cooper as seriously. Even if I'm not saying he didn't take the fight seriously, but it's a psychic thing, isn't it? You know, you're just not so finely attuned. He's like when he's got Liston and Foreman and Shavers in front of him, or Ron Lyle, it's a different ball game. The places are loaded differently.
Yeah, well, I mean, the level. That's what I'm saying. The level of awareness. You're not like all of a sudden everything's heightened. Your instincts are heightened. Your defense is better. Your ability to sense punches and your ability to, you know, I don't know if it's necessarily take the punch. If it lands solid, but you're taking something off it. I mean, just the awareness alone is an attribute that's enhanced when you're fighting somebody who's dangerous, and that's what I'm saying with you know, to circle back to you know, the heavyweight fights today. It's almost like nobody has that element of danger with the exception of the like top 2 fighters or 3 fighters. It doesn't go much deeper than that.
Yeah, certainly. Will Wilder has it, you know, and it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks, I think, from our point of view, Michael. Because as far as I'm concerned, we'll think outside the box to come up with content and subject matter. Because I'm not interested in, you know, you talk about heavyweight division, you know, Fury and Gano is 2 weekends from today. You've got the YouTube and nonsense this weekend, and we've had an easy ride this week because Gary's on a plane back to LA, so we didn't have to circumvent his desire to talk about it, you know. But so, you know, we don't have a lot going on in the heavyweight division certainly not the next several weeks. It will be interesting to see if Fury and Usyk do fight on December 23rd. You know, they're talking about Conor Benn fighting Chris Eubank Jr., which will be on another promotion in Saudi Arabia, also on December 23rd. God knows how that's going to work. But I suggest in the coming weeks that we talk about something else, certainly rather than Fury and Gano anyway.
Yeah, there'll be plenty to talk about, and you know, it's very interesting, this whole, you know, YouTuber thing. I'm really balanced with that now. I mean, I think it's an interesting conversation because being in boxing, we could certainly learn a lot from it. Like you could learn as much from bad fighters as you can from good fighters, actually. And you know, a lot of times, a lot of fights that aren't entertaining, we don't want to watch, but there's always something to take away from it, and there's always a way to. And you know, sometimes the negative stuff enhances what you're trying to build or your knowledge. It questions what you know, and whenever you can question what you know, you can strengthen, you know, that attribute.
Yeah. I must admit, I'm very kind of intent on ignoring. My jaw almost locks when it gets mentioned, you know, unless it's to say that the kind of thing I just said. Beyond that, my jaw just locks up and I just turn away, start looking at the floor, and I'm just like, At some
Yeah,
point, they'll
yeah,
start talking about something sensible, and
yeah.
I'm back in. But I just can't bother with it. So it's pathetic, to be honest with you. And I don't want to get on a roll or a rant as we get to the end of the program. But John Fury couldn't fight a lick when he was active, and now look at him. Some kind of star in this
Yeah.
quasi awful world.
Yeah, but I think doesn't that tell fighters that it's as much
Promotion, yeah.
it's as much personality as it is ability.
You're right. You're
Like,
absolutely right. It is, and I've always said, in a way, I feel hoist by my own petard by the universe or something. Because for years, I used to say when I'd have conversations about the whole law of boxing and the ideals of boxing, I would say, as long as
you
people
said
care about
LAW, the law of it, or lore, LORE.
LORE.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Continue.
And thank you. And I would often say, as long as people care about the personalities in that ring, they will watch the fight. And I would say that in a positive sense, because I would say guys like Nassim Hamed or Muhammad Ali or Sugar Leonard or all the rest of it.
It's always personality driven. But it's always personality driven, right? Like everything's personality driven. It's who we identify with. And if we identify with the traits of a certain individual, we're going to follow him. He interests us. We want to see he's me, or he has some of me in him. So I want to follow him and see him. And that's really what it's all about. So that's why I'm not as offended by it. I understand, you know what I mean? Like, trust me, I understand like the hardships of what it takes to get to the level you do, but they can never, like, money should never be obviously it's, it's a money helps. Money's not a bad thing, but that should never say, because like when Floyd says, okay, well, I want $600 million, so I'm the greatest fighter of all time. No, that doesn't prove you to be the greatest fighter of all time. It may prove you to be the greatest businessman of all time, of a businessman boxer of all time. I absolutely give that to you, but it doesn't mean you have ability, because the money is coming in for a reason, not because of your ability, but there's something else that drew people in.
Absolutely, because it's not like he was a particularly entertaining fighter. If it was based on being entertaining, Matthew Saad Muhammad would have made 1,200 million. So it's But I always hark back to Gene Tunney saying a successful prize fighter should have two aims in mind: to avoid harm and to make money. And by that, Floyd really smashed the hell out of that blueprint, didn't he?
Oh yeah. And you know what? I don't knock him for it. You can do it. It's great. You're absolutely in that way. Absolutely in that way. You did what you had to do. You got out the ring. You finished. But if every single fighter approached the sport like that,
it would be dead in the water. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there would be a problem. If every single fight was like how he was fighting at that time, and it didn't have the diversity, it didn't have the diversity of personalities and exciting fighters, the Gaddys, the Tysons, the Holyfields, you know what I mean? If it didn't have all that kind of stuff, boxing would be gone. But because we do have this excitement, and we, you know what I mean, it can withstand, fighters that don't fight that way.
And in any case, it's my personal belief that so long as we have Sugar, Silk, and Stretch, then boxing will survive. We will be back. You know what? We will be back on Sunday. We're back on Sunday. I think Gary will be back Sunday as well. He'll want to talk about the rubbish that's happening tomorrow night. Let's see what happens. Let's let the chips fall where they may. You cool with that?
I don't even know what it's on. It's pay-per-view.
I don't know. I mean, it must be. I guess it has to be, doesn't it? How could it not be?
Wait, and who's and Tyson? No, not Fury. Tommy Fury's fighting KSA.
His name's KSI, but I love the way you don't even know his name. That's beautiful.
I know his last name's Olajide. I don't know why I didn't say that.
Yeah, exactly. The Olajide kid. There's no prize for guessing who you're rooting for. Honest to God, it is beneath my dignity.
I did see a clip on social media where the kid that's fighting, what's his name, the blonde kid, he hit him with a microphone on the head or something.
Yeah, he would do, wouldn't he? And somebody spat at someone, and someone else threw a bottle,
But
and some
what's
girls called each other whores
but
or whatever.
wait
I
a
don't know.
minute, but not the KSI guy, the other
I
guy,
know, but
Paul.
it's all part of the whole fucking same press conference. It's the same show, I think.
But his name's Paul. Is it not Jimmy Paul?
Yeah, there's Jake Paul and Logan Paul. Yeah, I
Look,
think
Jake Paul, Logan Paul. So this guy hit Paul on the, I don't know which one of the brothers, but hit him on the head with the microphone like this.
yeah.
And so he was like, I think he was knocked out. So he like legitimately got a concussion before before the fight. And
Is it staged or is it real? I don't know. Because I
how
heard
do
that.
they, but how do they let? No, he was bleeding from his head and everything.
Oh, great.
How do you get a concussion? And just because it wasn't from a punch, you're gonna let the guy fight? The fight should be like not going on.
I did see a tweet. I couldn't help seeing it, by the way. I didn't want to see it, but I accidentally saw a tweet saying that the other Paul has agreed to step in. I think Jake Paul has said he'll step in for Logan. I think it was Logan who was fighting him. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
He will step in for him now because, but fuck knows. I don't know.
But that's what I'm saying is like you have an athletic commission. This guy, you just microphone or not, he got hit in the head and he was concussed. He could have had a car accident, smashed his head, he got concussed. He shouldn't be fighting tomorrow. It's insane.
Well, I'll tell you one thing you won't be doing either way is boxing. But and the other guy better perfect that microphone move because he can't do fuck all with his hands. I'm sure.
All right.
I'm a hard liner. Okay, listen, guys. Thanks for tuning in. It's I think it's better with Gary, but it's a lot quieter and calmer without him. That's my verdict tonight. Tune in on Sunday to see what you think when we get the third member back.
We get our third wheel back.
Exactly.
Ciao.